Have you ever watched an entire industry disappear and not really noticed until it was already gone? This is how automation actually works. There's no single moment where a factory shuts down and the news covers it for a week. Instead, jobs vanish slowly, quietly, one role at a time, until the people who used to fill them realize there's no version of that work left to go back to. And the strange part is that most of the economic conversation around this focuses on robots in warehouses or self checkout kiosks at grocery stores, as if those are the main examples worth worrying about. The displacement runs much deeper than that, and it reaches into industries that most people assume are insulated from it. The numbers tell a clearer story than the rhetoric does. A 2013 Oxford study estimated that roughly 47% of U.S. jobs were at high risk of automation within the next 2 decades. That figure got debated heavily, and some economists pushed back on the methodology. But even the more conservative estimates from the OECD put the number at around 14% of jobs facing high automation risk across developed economies. Roles involving predictable, repeatable cognitive tasks, loan processing, paralegal research, certain categories of medical diagnostics sit right in the automation crosshairs, and those are jobs that historically paid well enough to anchor a middle-class life. So why does this happen so quietly? When a bank replaces 50 loan officers with a machine learning system, they don't call it a layoff. They call it a workflow upgrade or a digital transformation initiative, and the affected employees leave through attrition, buyouts, or position eliminations spread over 18 months. The disruption is real, but it gets distributed across time in a way that makes it almost invisible to anyone not directly affected. In practice, the displacement doesn't fall evenly across the workforce. Geographic concentration matters a great deal here. Manufacturing towns in the American Midwest, for example, saw automation-related job losses that were disproportionately devastating compared to cities with diversified service economies. A 2020 Brookings Institution analysis found that the most automation-exposed workers were also the least likely to have the educational credentials or geographic mobility to shift into growing sectors. If automation is raising output and lowering production costs, you'd expect workers to benefit from some portion of that efficiency gain. In practice, productivity has grown substantially since the 1970s, while median wages have grown much more slowly, and labor's share of national income has declined across nearly every developed economy during the same period. This is a sample of my voice. I'm an informative and educational American narrator, best for voicing explainer videos. I'm so excited to get cloned. So Asterix's process of legal documents, analyzing financial data, and writing code. A 2023 Goldman Sachs report estimated that generative AI could affect roughly 300 million full-time jobs globally, with about two-thirds of current occupations exposed to some degree of automation. Could retraining solve it? The evidence here is mixed. Retraining programs for displaced workers have a poor track record in the United States specifically. A large-scale evaluation of the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, which was designed to help workers displaced by trade and automation transitions, found that participants actually earned less over the following decade than comparable workers who didn't go through the program. The programs tended to be underfunded, poorly matched to local labor markets, and unable to account for how quickly the target occupations themselves were changing. What makes this particularly difficult to address is that the economic incentives for businesses are almost perfectly aligned with continued automation adoption, while the political incentives for governments are aligned with avoiding the conversation until the damage is already visible. Governments that regulate automation face industry lobbying, capital flight arguments, and accusations of standing in the way of progress. The result is a structural mismatch between where the harm lands and where the decision-making authority sits. That's why some economists have started arguing for policies that directly tax automation at the point of adoption, essentially treating displaced labor as an externality that firms should be required to account for in their cost structures. The underlying logic isn't difficult to follow. If automation generates a social cost in the form of unemployment and reduced tax revenue, then the entity capturing the benefit of that automation should contribute something toward absorbing that cost. Whether that kind of policy is politically achievable in any major economy remains, at best, uncertain.